Welcome to the design thinking session. All yeah. So today we are going to talk about the Java Bean POJO entity objects. This is something very common. These terminologies are quite common in Java word, and these are also used in MDM. Yeah, let us start. So before we try to understand these terminologies and why these were made, let us try to see an example, and then it will make a lot of sense. So let us first start with this question. What is a software? Software is all about capturing the data somewhere, and that data goes through certain processing. Yeah, different systems will process that data, and then eventually it is stored in a certain storage device, your hard disk or wherever. And then at some stage you want them to be returned, online or offline, you want them to be returned. So that is what is software, right? In earlier days, the way the data was captured was on the leaves, and then it was leaves, and then people carved the information on the stone, and then it changed to pen and paper, and then it was rhymes. Yeah, people made stories, and then they made rhymes out of it, and then now you have a physical store, right? The computer and the storage, you get that storage. So and what data types do you manage? Generally you will manage text. Mostly we are going to work on this, right? Text and numbers. But then you manage videos, YouTube and all, right? And your Facebook, everything is there. Yeah. And the voice, the files, the image. Yeah, in the files you'll have different type of files. It could be a Java file, a Word document, PPT, Excel sheet, whatever. So this is typically what we do in the Java world, isn't it? But then this is what is the software all about. But then when technically what happens is, let us assume your online forms. Yeah, you go to any government office or anywhere, right? They capture your details, okay, customer details. Okay, generally it is called an application form, right? So either it could be a physical application form, or an online form. Let us assume you're filling an online form, or you are signing up, or you are registering to a certain website. You'll have so many details. At the end there will be submit button where they'll be capturing your details. This is an online form. So let us assume this goes as an HTML object. Okay, and then there will be, let us assume there is a middleware component. Okay, so this middleware component is built on Python, let us assume. Yeah. And then this HTML object, what you are, because Python understands only Python objects, right? So whatever you are sending here, this could be an HTML object or XML, depending on that application, right, where this is hosted. If this is on mobile, it may, that application which is having this application form may convert it into an XML, JSON, or an HTML. Okay, depending on that. So this XML, JSON, HTML will be converted into a Python object, because Python understands its native way, right? And then let us assume it is sent to a backend system. Okay, let us assume it is sent to an MDM system, backend system, MDM system, and then it is sent to a database. Yeah. So what happens is, so when this Python object comes in here, when they are calling, so this Python object is converted into XML, because you would have given your web services. Remember your previous design thinking session. So this system, when they want to call you, they could have very well called a method, a direct method. We call it as remote method invocation, RMI, or we call it as remote procedure call. They could very well do it, but what you prefer is, you have adapted to a service oriented architecture, and you prefer people calling you via your services. Okay, so let us assume you are exposing your services. You have given your services file to them, many to them, so they are calling, and then they were sending you the XML or JSON. Okay, when then they send XML or JSON, it goes it once again, this XML comes, then this XML is converted into a Java object. Okay, so this Java object, because MDM is built on a Java J2EE product, so it gets converted into a Java object. So when this is converted into a Java object, eventually, so this system database is Oracle, so it understands SQL. So this Java object is now converted into what a SQL statement: insert, update, delete, whatever you are doing, or a query. So and it will go. So basically, what we are telling is these are the systems where the data is getting converted, right? It started with HTML, XML, and then it became a Python object, and then they made XML, and then they made. So this is how the systems work. Yeah, typically this is how the systems work. But the interesting point is what we are here for us to understand is, so here you are giving the customer details like name, first name, address. So this is going in. So this is an HTML. So observe, guys. So there is an HTML object which is carrying these details. It's a data packet. It's like envelope, whatever you can say. It's a carry bag. So it is taking these details, okay, and it converted into Python object. It then took an XML JSON, okay, it was converted into XML. So now our XML JSON become a data packet, and now it went on and it got once again converted into Java object. So the Java object became a data carrier. It carried that data, okay, and then this SQL, and then it was converted into a SQL statement. Then that is carrying a SQL object, is carrying your data, and eventually it went and got stored into a table and rows, okay, for future use. So eventually your data got persisted. So there is a state there, it got permanently stored somewhere. But while it was going through the wire or the systems, it was getting converted into different objects, and they were the data carriers. So that data carrier is nothing but how it is stored. In Java it will be stored in an object, okay, in Python it will be a Python object, in Java it will be a Python object. So that Java object which carries this data is called a POJO class, plain old Java object, or it is called a Java bean, okay, or it is called an entity object. So entity, right? We have already been telling in other sessions that entity, what is an entity? You think everything is an entity, right? At a database level, they generally say it as an entity. A customer is an entity, address is an entity, name is an entity, different tables, the way you model it, they become an entity. So there is a corresponding class for it. So, but then you may ask this question, so how different it is from any other Java class, right? So in other Java class, what we generally say is, what is a Java class? We say, oh, it is a blueprint where it will help you to make different instances objects when it runs into runtime. But then how it is different from POJO? So generally in the Java class, what we say is a state is what data you are carrying, right? It will have that data, okay, state of that data, and then it will have a behavior means what are those functions it may do, right? So for example, I want to write a Java class where it does calculus functions for me. It gets a derivative for me, it gets the integral values for me, okay, or it is calculating an area for me, or it is calculating some log values for me, or it is helping me for something. So those are the behavior, those are the functions, okay. It will have a state plus behavior. But in the POJO, you will mostly have only the state, okay. So the behavior, such behaviors will not be there. It is not used for processing of the data. It is just the data packet, it is just the data carrier. So where it helps you, so in the POJO, Java Bean, these are the things, in a big enterprises, when when you are transmitting the data, so you are transmitting it, right? So here from we saw an example where you were transmitting the data from HTML object to this, right? So in an enterprise you are using Facebook, so lot of many millions of users are being using the Facebook application, right? Likewise, many users, so many millions of users will be using your enterprise application. So these objects will be going into the system, they will be called, instantiated, and they will be called, these are the data carriers, right? So in such cases, the POJO objects will come very handy. So another important use of these POJO objects is for the reason that they will also help you in. So the first benefit is, they work as a data packet or a carrier, okay. Second is they help you in the transactional integrity. Let us try to understand what is a transactional integrity, okay. So let us first try to understand what is transaction, and then we'll try to understand the integrity. So what is a transaction? Let us assume on your HTML form you have a customer address. You are filling the customer details, okay. So you fill in a name, you fill in an address and you click a submit button. But then when it comes to the middleware, so here you have, here you're not accepting name and address as one service. So you are an MDM, you have designed this MDM application, and then you say, see, I have one service for add name or add customer, and your name is mandatory. It's a microservice, yeah. And then you have another service for add address. Okay, so and then you tell your middleware application, see, I cannot take all these details at one shot, so you please split it. You know, you could make two service calls. Okay, add customer name, and so then they will split it. You know, they would have taken this, let us assume it would have come as an HTML to them. They would split it, they will call your services, and they will make your soap, right? Soap or rest, they will call soap services, and then they will make two calls. But then they will make two calls, and then they will send the data. Yeah, so this is one way of doing it. So but now what we are talking is about the transaction, right? So here they expect they expect that name and address are mandatory. Your UI is expecting that name and address are mandatory. If name is going through but the address is not going through, it should fail. You know, this page should fail. Let us assume your add customer service works fine, it gives you a success response, but your add address service gives you a failure response. Okay, so then what happens is in the transactional, so for them the transaction is, the you need to add the name plus address. So this becomes their transaction. But then here you split it. So the integrity is right. As long as both are committed onto the database, then the transaction is completed. If only n happens and this happens, the transaction is not completed, it's not a transaction. Okay, so only when both are done, that is when it is done. Okay, so it's like your banking thing, right? You know, you debited some money from your ATM account, but then it should go and reflect in your database that you have taken that money. So it gets reflected into one database and then not in the other database, then it becomes a problem. Okay, so here, so this system has to take that responsibility, because they have given you, MDM has given them the two services, so they need to see the transactional integrity. So they will first send a add customer, okay, and then they will wait for this response, and then they will send add address, and then they will send this response. Okay, only when these both are there, then they will send a success response to this. Okay, or they will tell, see, this is how the pages are done, please you make one service for both of them, accept customer and address in one service. I don't want to maintain the transactional integrity, because this will lead to a lot of coding on my side. So this they can mandate this. You know, this is how the designers think, right? So then when this happens, so then now the challenge is, okay, add customer already went and got committed, your customer got committed, but then address did not get commit in the database. They threw a rollback, saying, oh boss, you know, this is not the transaction complete, because they wanted you to be filled, these are mandatory there. So what happens is, now you, when as a designers, you the add customer went and sat in, right? So there has to be another request. Now you'll have to design another request, add customer name or delete customer, right? Delete customer request, and then you will have to go as a third sequence, you will have to delete the customer. So this is the transactional integrity. Okay, so when you will be designing it, you know, either the transactional integrity has to be maintained by this middleware, or it has to be maintained by you. So now how is this related to the POJO objects? So the POJO objects is, so sometimes what happens, these transactional integrities are maintained inside the product itself. So for example, what happens is, you let us assume the transactional integrities are everywhere, it is at a database level. Okay, let us assume what happened. So the transactional integrities are everywhere, it is at a database level, it is at an application level. Application means your MDM application and all. So what happens is, let us assume you have some problem. I'm not using this is just, oh my god, how do I stop this? Okay, stopping. Let me erase this. Okay, so the transactional integrity is at the table level also. For what do we mean by a table level? For example, this is the name table and this is an address table. So as a part of one transaction came with the name plus address. You know, you are doing it as a part of same transaction. So it expects, this transaction expects, you know, this is, let us assume this is a transaction. Sometimes we call it as a transaction, sometimes we call it as a service, sometimes we call it as an operation. All mean same. Okay, do not get confused, they are used interchangeably. Yeah, so when you are sending this transaction, so they expect the name and address to be added. So you added a name, yes, but address did not get added, so it will roll back. So that is why you have something called last transaction ID. Transaction ID. So what it means is, if it adds 111, here also it will add last transaction TXN ID. Here also it will add 1111. So which means it was added as a part of one transaction. And if this is failing, if this fails, yeah, of course it will roll back. But if this is added and if this gets failed, what happens is this will also get rolled back. This is at a DB level. So likewise, it is at an application level also. So let us assume you have added one service called add customer, and it is, suppose you have designed it like it should take name and address inside it. So it was able to see that when you create a POJO object, you will have something called TCRM party BOBJ. Okay, so inside this you will have TCR. So you have referred an another class TCRM name. BOBJ stands for business object. Okay, you have referenced this object, and then you have also referenced TCRM address BOBJ. Okay, so in one main party, you in one main class, you have referred to two more other classes. Okay, these are called object references. Okay, so when you have, so what it expects is, you have written the service in such a way when name and address should both commit together. Okay, if these are not committed, yeah, if these are not commit, eventually where it will get commit, it has to get commit at the DB side, right? So the application, there is a bind between your application and the database. So your name is relating to the name table, which we called an entity object. This is one POJO class. Okay, this class will have all the columns as a variables, and this is an address class which will be mapped to this address table. So it's just one class being mapped. We call it as a binding. You are binding this with this table, you're binding this with this table. So and then when you set the transactional integrity, you set the integrity in a such a way in a Java code, you say if name goes fine, it's fine. If address has also to go, it should also go fine. If this doesn't go fine, then we fail the entire transaction. So you set the transactional integrity. So there is a concept called entity beans. You know, if you see, if you read on it, this is called transactional management, you know, entity beans. And there is something called hibernate transactional management. Okay, so the when you implement these things, you get everything. You know, you can set, you know, with this you can, with configurations you can always easily manage the transaction management. Yeah, so these come very very handy, okay, when you have to manage. So now the two usages, we spoke on the data packet. Okay, the first use was on the data packet. You know, it helps you to hold the data. Second is on the transactional integrity. Okay, the third is on the frameworks, like we call it as a dependency injection. You know, you will get to hear this in spring. Spring framework has adapted to the dependency injection. So what people thought, you know, when they thought, okay, you are writing a lot and lot of classes, you know, though these POJO classes are nothing but similar to, are not similar, they're exactly the mapping of, you know, I have a table called name, I have a table called address, I have a table called telephone, like that. So many tables, right? My data entities. So I will have one class for it. I will have a name class, I will have an address class, I will have a telephone class. Okay. Likewise, those number of entities, these are like nouns, right? You use as many number of nouns in the world. You can make a class out of it. I'm just sitting here around. I can make a class. I'm seeing the objects around me. I'm seeing a AC. That could be a class for me. I'm seeing the doll. That could be a class. A shelf, a keyboard, my laptop, my adapter, my door, my wardrobe, all of these anything you can think of around you, right, around your world, it can become an object because it will have its own state, and then it will have a function of its own. It does something. Okay. And then so then there will be a binding, right, name and address, but then you want to set an transactional integrity. You can manage it by what? But then what is a dependency injection? So people thought, why don't we make it easy for the developers when we are transmitting the data, right? So you wrote an HTML object. Okay. You're filling in some customer details. Okay. So then there is a middleware, and then there is this your MDM application, and then there is your database. Okay. So when the data is being transmitted, they thought, why don't we pre-fill this data? For example, there is a data coming in, right? We know this customer, let us bind them. Customer address, this HTML is coming here middleware is sending, and you have exposed your services. So they will send this in your XML, right? They will send this data because you expect them to send it in an XML or a JSON. When you send it, why don't I pre-fill my objects? I will not parse through this XML. I will not write the code by myself. That parse this XML one by one and then set up the values. I will create a new object of mine. For example, let us assume your XML is coming is like this: customer name, okay, Ramesh, yeah, and then last name Kulkarni, and then I'm adding this customer. So this XML is coming. So I will take it, read it. Oh, it starts from here, some XML parser. I will parse this name. So I will set it into a name class. I will make one somewhere in the Java code. I will make name is equal to name is equal to new name. I will make that class, and then I will start setting name instance dot set first name. Okay, whatever value is inside this, that I will set it here. Okay, like that I will make an object. But then why do I have to do all this? Instead, why don't I write a common package, common Java class where I can inject them immediately? If it is all well structured, we use the standards. So whatever the data is coming, it will make this Java class. I would have given this binding first itself. Okay, whatever comes into the customer should go to this object. So it will generate it upfront. I need not have to really worry. Okay. So I will design my applications that way. So that is called dependency injections. Okay. So that is where these beans and pojos, they come in very handy. So once again, I will repeat: your pojo and bean is same, where these are data carriers or data packets. Okay. And then your entity bean is used for your transactional integrity. So this is very important concept. When you become seniors, you will realize this is all used. Mainly this is how the Java objects are done. And there is another concept called serialization and deserialization. I'll just touch it up. I mean, I'll not go detail into it because that is going to get deprecated in the new Java versions 10 11. But then they thought, they wanted to make it really fast, because these are your pojos, right? Eventually these are going to go and sit into your database. Okay, they are going to quickly get converted. So what they did is, this pojo class, why don't we serialize them? So what do we mean by serialize is, what they did is, they converted these pojos, your Java objects, these are data packets, right? They converted into a byte stream. Okay, by doing this, it was so easy for them to go and store it in a file, in a database, yeah, or wherever, some storage systems. And when they will store them into a byte stream. It will have an ID of its own, and they can go and easily store it as a byte stream. And when they want to get it back, they will reconvert it. So it is called a deserialization serialization. Okay. deserialization. But then there have been a lot of talks that it is a little vulnerable, vulnerable for security risks, and hence they are trying to remove that. But then there are talks on, and they are thinking, so it is just to speed up the process, right? They convert into byte stream, and then they will keep it, for future use, and then they can easily reconvert and get it. So this is about the Java beans. It's very, very important. If please talk to me if you have any questions. This definitely brings in a whole new dimension, right? The way you see Java. Yeah. And it will definitely help you while you coding, or while you, the support team, if they are accessing, they will get heap dumps and all, it will get it. Or if you are somebody who would like to think, how these applications are running, this is how the transactional integrities are maintained. So this is how all happens. Yeah. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope this video will definitely help you and empower your knowledge, and it will help you for your day-to-day work. Thanks again. Bye bye.